In Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, April 8th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. It's been another very busy day, and I was watching day 9 of the Derek Chauvin trial in the murder of George Floyd. And today was a very damaging day of testimony from Dr. Martin Tobin, who is a pulmonologist. He's a breathing expert, a lung doctor. And he destroyed Derek Chauvin's defense. And he said that George Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, and also that George Floyd suffered a brain injury as well. Okay. He suffered a seizure and suffered a brain injury. And he also said that Derek Chauvin kept his knee on George Floyd's neck for 3 minutes after George Floyd stopped breathing. Okay, so it was a very, very damaging day of testimony. Then we also heard from a surgeon, and the surgeon dispelled the defense that George Floyd suffered a heart attack and basically died from the heart attack, or that George Floyd suffered from excited delirium. He dispelled that myth as well. Okay. Police surgeon Bill Smock testified today as well. Okay, so it was another day of damaging testimony, and we're going to break some of this down here for you. And then also, you know, Joe Biden has released his $2 trillion infrastructure bill, $2 trillion plus infrastructure bill. And it focuses more on just traditional infrastructure. It also focuses on broadband internet, different things like this. But there's an article from NPR, National Public Radio, that just came out that ties into this $2 trillion infrastructure bill. And it deals with a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways, a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. And it ties into the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts of 1952 and 56, and some other things as well. So we're going to talk about some of that history today as well. Okay. All right. Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word KEMET, K-E-M-E-T, the 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word KEMET, K-E-M-E-T, the 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you like this type of information, also you can support the African History Network, $TheAHNShow through Cash App, $TheAHNShow through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. Okay, so I want to jump into this information, what happened today, and we're going to go to clip. We're going to go to clip 1, Shakita, from NBC Nightly News. So you had Dr. Martin Tobin, a world-renowned physician in pulmonary and critical care medicine. He's a pulmonologist. He's a breathing expert, a lung doctor. He testified that George Floyd died from a low level of oxygen. At the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, prosecutors maintained that George Floyd died from Derek Chauvin kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes in 29 seconds. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin said that by his calculations, 91 and a half pounds was on George Floyd's neck at one point. 91 and a half pounds was on George Floyd's neck at one point. Half of Derek Chauvin's body weight and half of the weight of the gear, the police gear that Derek Chauvin was wearing also. Okay. Dr. Martin Tobin also pointed to an image from a body cam video showing George Floyd pressing his knuckles against the tire of the police car. And Dr. Martin Tobin said this tells you that he has used up his resources, referring to oxygen, and he's now literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles. Let's go to this clip, Shakila.
List of demeanors. Dr. Martin Tobin cut to the heart of George Floyd's death.
Mr. Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, and this caused damage to his brain.
A direct and powerful rebuttal of the defense's argument that Floyd died because of drugs and underlying medical conditions.
Do any of those conditions have anything to do with the cause of Mr. Floyd's death, in your professional opinion, whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
Dr. Tobin showed jurors a 3D animation to illustrate what happened. He testified that Chauvin kept his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 3 minutes after Floyd took his last breath.
You can see his eyes, he's conscious, and then you see that he isn't. That is the moment the life goes out of his body.
Dr. Tobin, an expert pulmonologist who wrote what's known in the medical field as the Bible on breathing, testified other parts of Floyd's body revealed his desperate struggle to survive.
You see his knuckle against the tire. And to most people, this doesn't look terribly significant, but to a physiologist, this is extraordinarily significant, because this tells you that he has used up his resources and he is now literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles.
Dr. Tobin also told jurors this picture of Chauvin's toe off the ground showed the officer placed most of his weight on Floyd. During cross-examination, Chauvin's defense attorney tried to cast some doubt, but the world-renowned expert gave little ground.
You've taken this case and you've literally boiled it down into a nanosecond.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Late today, a toxicologist testified that the amount of meth found in Floyd's blood was low and consistent with a single prescription dose. Tomorrow, we're expecting to hear from the county medical examiner about his controversial autopsy.
Okay, pause it right there. We're up against a break. You don't want to miss this show. When we come back for the break, listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Are you getting ready for fall or winter? We have the solution for all seasonal clothing needs. Comedicwear.com is the go-to online source for Comedic African fashion and lifestyle products with a contemporary twist. We're committed to offering unique styles reflecting our African heritage. Comedicwear.com is inspired by ComedicScribes.com to influence our people in learning and showing pride. Please visit our website at Comedicwear.com.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new uprise.
Hi, I'm Joel Wilson, President and CEO of Jcw Computer Consulting Llc, a technology implementation firm with over 20 years of satisfying customers. We offer a full spectrum of industry top-tier branded services. We are an authorized partner or reseller for Lenovo, Zoom, T-Mobile, Microsoft 365 and Surface tablets, Google Workspace, Acer, Asus, Samsung, PCmatic security software, and many more. Our online store features laptops, Chromebooks, computers, printers, accessories, and software. Businesses, take advantage of our free 1-hour Zoom tech consultation and know we offer top nationwide high-speed internet service providers, voice over IP, and cellular phone services. Home users, don't miss our current in-stock Chromebook inventory. Please visit us at jcwcc.com or call 215-879-6701.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, April 8th, 2021, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. 313-778-7600. Okay, so right before the break, we were recapping what took place today during day 9 of the Derek Chauvin trial. Okay, and we just heard an excerpt from Dr. Martin Tobin, who's a pulmonologist. He's a lung doctor. He's an expert. He's a world-renowned pulmonologist. Now, he also today, so you heard the clip, and he was referencing a chart and talking about Derek Chauvin's toe being off the ground as well. Okay. Let's go to this chart here and turn on the screen share so you can see this. What we're going to do, we're going to replay that clip. We're going to replay clip 1, Shakita, because I have this chart up and I want people to see it here who are watching on Facebook and YouTube. So just cue clip 1 back up, please. All right. So as I was saying, you have, let's go to this here. 91.5 pounds was on George Floyd's neck at one point. So we see the image of an officer, Chauvin, with his body weight on George Floyd's neck. Okay. And Dr. Martin Tobin also talked about the toe off the ground. So you see that depicted here. You see it circled. Okay. Let's go back to clip 1 now that we have this graphic up and I can describe it. Let's go back to clip 1, Shakita.
In the calmest of demeanors, Dr. Martin Tobin cut to the heart of George Floyd's death.
Mr. Floyd died from a low level of oxygen, and this caused damage to his brain.
A direct and powerful rebuttal of the defense's argument that Floyd died because of drugs and underlying medical conditions.
Do any of those conditions have anything to do with the cause of Mr. Floyd's death? in your professional opinion, whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
Dr. Tobin showed jurors a 3D animation to illustrate what happened. He testified that Chauvin kept his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 3 minutes after Floyd took his last breath.
You can see his eyes, he's conscious, and then you see that he isn't. That's the moment the life goes out of his body.
Dr. Tobin, an expert pulmonologist who wrote what's known in the medical field as the Bible on breathing, testified other parts of Floyd's body revealed his desperate struggle to survive.
You see his knuckle against the tire. And to most people, this doesn't look terribly significant, but to a physiologist, this is extraordinarily significant, because this tells you that he has used up his resources and he is now literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles.
Dr. Tobin also told jurors this picture of Chauvin's toe off the ground showed the officer place most of his weight on Floyd. During cross-examination, Chauvin's defense attorney tried to cast some doubt, but the world-renowned expert gave little ground.
You've taken this case and you've literally boiled it down into a nanosecond.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Late today, a toxicologist testified that the amount of meth found in Floyd's blood was low and consistent with a single prescription dose. Tomorrow, we're expecting to hear from the county medical examiner about his controversial autopsy.
Okay, so the medical examiner is going to testify on Friday because in his autopsy, he did not mention asphyxiation. However, as information came out in today's testimony, his autopsy could very well be correct also. Okay, we're going to find out more about that on Friday when he testifies. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin told the jury that Derek Chauvin held his knee on George Floyd's neck for more than 3 minutes after, quote, there was not an ounce of oxygen left, end quote, in his body. 3 minutes after there was not an ounce of oxygen left in George Floyd's body. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin also challenged the defense's argument that fentanyl factored into George Floyd's death, saying that George Floyd's breathing rate appeared to be normal on body camera footage. Fentanyl can significantly slow a person's breathing. We're going to go to clip 2 in just a second. Here's Shakita. Now, if we look at New York Times has really good updates on this. I look at the live updates from New York Times, Washington Post, and NBC News. We'll go to key moments on day 9 of the Derek Chauvin trial in just a second from the New York Times. If we look at the live updates from the Washington Post, let's go to this here. Okay, so they talk about Dr. Martin Tobin's testimony, and they say a breathing expert said that George Floyd died of low oxygen, struggling for air under an officer's knee. Then a police surgeon also testified today, emphatically discounted that George Floyd suffered a heart attack or had excited delirium. And a forensic toxicologist said George Floyd's blood contained only a small amount of methamphetamine. So once again, you have this effort to try to blame the drugs for George Floyd's death, as opposed to the knee on his neck, okay, that everybody sees. They want to blame it on the drugs and say it was the drugs that killed him. All right. Now, Thursday's testimony spoke to what could be the heart of the case, challenging Derek Chauvin's defense and his central argument that George Floyd died of a combination of heart disease, drugs, and high blood pressure. A combination of heart disease, drugs, and high blood pressure. Okay, now one could make the argument he died of a combination of a knee on his neck and white supremacy. One could make that argument. White supremacy and racism. One could make that argument. Derek Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, has suggested George Floyd's already compromised heart grew overwhelmed by his struggle with the police, with the police officers there on the scene. Andrew Baker, the chief medical examiner in Minnesota's Hennepin County, is expected to testify on Friday, as I said. Okay, now I want to go to clip 2 here. And clip 2, this is from MSNBC. Pulmonologist captivates jurors with demonstrations, questions during testimony. Let's go to clip 2, Shakita.
And how have they been acting today? How have they been responding to the testimony?
Yeah, Jeff, so a clear contrast from what we saw a couple of days ago with the jury and what we're seeing today. The pool reporters inside are saying that they're very engaged. And it's interesting because, speaking about how people breathe, and sort of the science of it all is a bit dry, but jurors are captivated. And as Shauna had mentioned, this witness is very engaging, calling on jurors to, sort of touch their neck as he's trying to describe certain things. But what really stands out here is when the prosecution slowed down that video where you could see George Floyd's face. And when Dr. Tobin mentioned, take a look there, you can see when his eyes start to close for the final time. Dr. Tobin then said, that's the moment the life goes out of his body. And this is a moment where jurors were taking notes, leaning into the video, and certainly worth noting that George Floyd's family is inside the courtroom, and they just continue to stare straight ahead. So obviously, an incredibly emotional moment for them as well, but certainly a powerful moment there for the prosecution.
Okay, so that was from Eamon Mohadeen on MSNBC. The jury was really engaged. It got to the point where Eric Nelson called for a sidebar because as Dr. Martin Tobin is going through and demonstrating and showing the jury and everybody watching, millions of people watching, he's demonstrating on his body and telling them to touch the back of their neck, touch their throat, things like this. The jury is following along with him. So that's not going too well for Chauvin. So defense attorney Eric Nelson wanted to shut that down. So then the judge came back, they did a sidebar, and the judge said that the jury, they did not have to follow along and demonstrate on themselves as Dr. Martin Tobin was demonstrating. If they wanted to, they could, but they weren't obligated to do that. So when you have the jury engaged like that for a witness for the prosecution, that's not going too well for you. Okay. When you're the defense, that's not going too well for you. All right. I want to look at, I want to flip over here and look at some other testimony that took place. Let me see. Is this the right one? So brain injury, George Floyd suffered from brain injury also because of this altercation. He suffered brain injury as well. I want to look at this. This is something that Dr. Martin Tobin testified to as well today. I want to look at the key moments from the New York Times. I'm going to look at the reporting from the New York Times here. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a quick question or comment. We're going to look at key moments on day 9 of the Derek Chauvin trial from the New York Times. So, Mr. Floyd showed signs of a brain injury under Derek Chauvin's knee. Okay, picture of Dr. Martin Tobin, who is, the defense cannot mess with him. Okay, the defense tried to confuse him and things like this, and he shut them down on cross-examination. The defense, Eric Nelson, tried to confuse him, and Dr. Tobin really shut him down. But I want to go to this here. So A veteran lung doctor testified on Thursday that George Floyd's death was caused in part by Derek Chauvin's knee pressing against his neck and back, making it impossible for him to breathe, and that George Floyd showed signs of a brain injury about 4 minutes before Derek Chauvin lifted his knee from his neck. So not only was he suffering from a low level of oxygen, but he's also suffering from a brain injury as well because of the knee on his neck and a low level of oxygen, making it impossible for him to breathe. And George Floyd showed signs of a brain injury about 4 minutes before Derek Chauvin lifted his knee from his neck. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin, a pulmonologist and critical care doctor in Chicago, said in court that the combination of Derek Chauvin's pressure, the handcuffs pulling George Floyd's hands behind his back, and George Floyd's body being pressed against the street had caused him to die from a low level of oxygen, but he's also suffering a brain injury at the same time. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin was adamant that Derek Chauvin had, at the time, Officer Derek Chauvin had caused George Floyd's death on May 25th. He said that based on George Floyd's visible respiratory rate before he went unconscious, any fentanyl in his system was not having an effect on his breathing. Any fentanyl in his system was not having an effect on his breathing. Okay, so he's going through systematically shutting down the defense. He's going through systematically shutting down Derek Chauvin's defense. Okay, this was devastating testimony today. Now, after analyzing, and we're going to go to clip 3 in just a second, Shakita, from the readout. After analyzing videos of the arrest, Dr. Martin Tobin said he determined that Derek Chauvin had pressed his left knee on George Floyd, had pressed his left knee on George Floyd's neck for more than 90% of the time. For more than 90% of the time. For more than 90% of the time that George Floyd was on the ground, and that he kept his right knee on George Floyd's back for the majority of the time as well. So he had his left knee on George Floyd's neck and his right knee on George Floyd's back. That pressure, combined with having his hands cuffed behind his back and pushed into the street face down, had cut off oxygen and caused his heart to stop, Dr. Martin Tobin testified today. He was, quote, he was being squashed between the two sides. He was being squashed between the two sides. Now, George Floyd was so desperate at one point that he tried to lift himself off the ground by pushing his right knuckle against a police car's tire, Dr. Martin Tobin testified. He said this is his only way of trying to get air into the right lung. Now, Dr. Martin Tobin outlined 4 factors that he said had caused George Floyd to lose oxygen and die. I'm telling you, this was devastating. I was watching this today. All 9 days I've watched, and I go through and research and look at the updates and go through and research this to prepare for, a show each night. This was devastating testimony today. Dr. Martin Tobin outlined 4 factors that he said had caused George Floyd to lose oxygen and die. 1, the left knee. The left knee of Derek Chauvin on George Floyd's neck. 2, Derek Chauvin's right knee on George Floyd's back and side. 3, George Floyd being handcuffed as he was lying in the street. And 4, George Floyd being held in the prone position. He's on his stomach. These factors had combined to only allow George Floyd to take small breaths, which were not enough to bring air to the parts of the lungs that allow oxygen to get into blood, and then the blood carries oxygen throughout the body, carries oxygen to the brain. So we know that he tried to, Derek Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, tried to push back on a cross-examination. Fentanyl and methamphetamine were found in George Floyd's system, and the possibility that they caused his death is a crucial argument for Derek Chauvin's defense as the trial enters a phase in which medical testimony is front and center. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So check this out. Now, you had also a surgeon who testified today. Okay. You had Surgeon Bill Smock. Who testified today. And Dr. Bill Smock, a surgeon from the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department. Okay. He testified that he had found no evidence to support claims that George Floyd died of an overdose. So they're going through, the prosecution is going through systematically with evidence and expert witnesses, systematically disarming the defenses point by point. They're going through systematically with expert witnesses, with doctors, with police use of force instructors. They're going through systematically point by point, refuting the defense of Derek Chauvin, but is based upon the facts and the evidence. So Dr. Bill Smock testified today, and he testified. He said he saw no evidence of an overdose. He said Mr. Floyd died from positional asphyxia, which is a fancy way of saying he died because he had no oxygen left in his body. All right. Once again, it wasn't an overdose, as Eric Nelson is saying. It wasn't excited delirium, as Eric Nelson is saying. And excited delirium is rooted in racism, as we've been talking about the past couple of days. Okay. George Floyd was alert and had a keen sense of space, which both indicate that he was not overdosing, said Dr. Bill Smock. In addition, George Floyd was begging for air. Dr. Bill Smock called it air hunger, and said a person overdosing on fentanyl would typically have the opposite response, more like someone who falls asleep or slips into a coma. That's not what happened with George Floyd. When asked whether George Floyd was suffering from a fentanyl overdose, Dr. Bill Smock said, quote, "That is not a fentanyl overdose. That is somebody begging to breathe," systematically shutting down the defense's arguments. All right. Now, okay, I want to go to Washington Post now. Okay, so this is key moments from day 9. This is from New York Times. All right. I want to go over to the Washington Post because this gets back into excited delirium, which we've been talking about the past few days this week. And this is on page, because I print all this stuff out. So this is on page 3 of the live updates from the Washington Post. Let's flip over to Washington Post live updates, because they talked about excited delirium today in court. Police surgeon, this is Dr. Bill Smock once again. Police surgeon discount heart attack, excited delirium. Let's see. This is the right one here. Let me scroll down. Hold on. Yeah, right here. This is what I want right here. Chauvin's legal team argues excited delirium contributed to his death, but it has no definition. This is what we'll do. We'll go back and we'll look at Dr. Bill Smock, what he said here, because it talks about excited delirium. And then I want to go to this other portion that talks about how excited delirium has no real definition. Okay, positional asphyxia. Okay, we've got that. There's absolutely no evidence at autopsy of anything that suggested George Floyd had a heart attack. Shut that down. Chauvin's defense attorney is trying to show that George Floyd died of a combination of intoxication, heart disease, and high blood pressure, as adrenaline from his struggle with police acted to further compromise an already compromised heart. Now, okay, fentanyl, okay. Critics have questioned okay, right here. Dr. Bill Smock said he is well acquainted with the signs of excited delirium, a, quote, physical and psychiatric state, end quote, in which the patients show a high heart rate, seemingly superhuman strength. Now, see, this argument of excited delirium, and I'm going to show you this in just a minute, ties into racism and the fear of African American men, especially high on drugs, in that they will have superhuman strength, where they try to rape white women, all this stuff. This ties into a deep history. Dr. Bill Smock said he is well acquainted with the signs of excited delirium, a, quote, physical and psychiatric state, end quote, in which the patients show a high heart rate, seemingly, quote, superhuman strength, end quote, garbled speech, and some other symptoms. George Floyd did not show these symptoms, he said. George Floyd did not show these symptoms, he said. So part of the argument is that Derek Chauvin had to keep his knee on George Floyd's neck even after George Floyd was unresponsive, because as defense attorney Nelson has said numerous times throughout this trial, someone who's unconscious can wake up and start struggling again, or they can wake up and have some type of superhuman strength, because he's arguing excited delirium and they have some type of superhuman strength. And the expert witnesses are shutting this argument down. This is what's taking place in court. And the expert witnesses are systematically shutting down this argument. All right, now, critics have questioned the use of excited delirium, calling it pseudoscience used to protect police officers who use excessive force. Okay, well, let's, yesterday and the day before yesterday, we talked about some of the history of excited delirium. All right, I want to go back to that. That was from, I think that was from day 8, New York Times update. Let's try to find this here. That was day 8. Key moments. Just a second here. All right, which one was that? I'll find it here in just a second. I need to, oh yeah, right here. This was from April 5th, okay? What is excited delirium? This is from the updates from the New York Times also. And if you just Google what is excited delirium, it's going to come up from the New York Times. Let's look at this. Excited delirium is rooted in racism. No wonder they chose this as a defense for Derek Chauvin. Some experts insist Some experts insist that excited delirium syndrome is a genuine medical condition, while others say it is simply an excuse for police brutality. There is no, so in opening statements, Derek Chauvin's defense mentioned excited delirium only in passing, but did say that a contributing factor to George Floyd's death was, quote, the adrenaline flowing through his body, There is no generally accepted definition of excited delirium, according to a 2018 review of the scientific literature, but the term is used to describe someone who becomes distressed or aggressive from a mental illness or the use of psychoactive drugs. Now, excited delirium is not included in the International Classification of Diseases or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, but has been recognized by the National Association of Medical Examiners and the American College of Emergency Physicians. According to a report from the Brookings Institution, the term excited delirium is disproportionately applied to African Americans, disproportionately applied to Black people, and was first used in 1985 to explain a series of sudden deaths in cocaine users occurring primarily while in police custody. It was first used in 1985 to explain a series of sudden deaths in cocaine users occurring primarily while in police custody, and again to explain the deaths of 32 Black women in Miami in the 1980s who were later determined to have been asphyxiated by a serial killer. So when you study excited delirium, it's rooted in racism. Basically, it's rooted in racism. All right. I want to go to before we run out of time here on 910 AM Superstation. I want to go to clip 3. We'll go to clip 3. I want to go to clip 3 here from the readout. Joanne Reed, pulmonologist, says he doesn't believe fentanyl was responsible for George Floyd's death. Let's go to clip 3, Shakita. Take it off mute.
With science, namely riveting testimony.
Start from the beginning again. Start from the beginning, please.
Derek Chauvin. With science, namely riveting testimony in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, that focused on the key question of exactly what caused George Floyd's death. The prosecution zeroed in on that very question today with Dr. Martin Tobin, an expert pulmonologist and breathing expert with 46 years of experience, who gave testimony free of charge to the state, no fees involved, offering his medical opinion on exactly how Mr. Floyd died.
From a low level of oxygen, and this caused damage to his brain that we see, and it also caused a PEA arrhythmia that caused his heart to stop.
Dr. Tobin, who said that he watched videos of Floyd on the ground hundreds of times, also noted the body language that revealed Floyd's desperation during his final moments of life.
You see his knuckle against the tire. And to most people, this doesn't look terribly significant, but to a physiologist, this is extraordinarily significant, because this tells you that he has used up his resources and he is now literally trying to breathe with his fingers and knuckles.
The expert pulmonologist also countered the defense's claim that drug use and underlying health conditions led to Floyd's death.
A healthy person subjected to what Mr. Floyd was subjected to would have died.
Wow, he also noted the exact moment that Floyd died.
At the beginning, you can see he's conscious. You can see slight flickering, and then it disappears.
And
so one second he's alive and 1 second he's no longer. That's the moment the life goes out of his body.
And still, Chauvin's knee remained.
When he last take a breath, the knee remains on the neck for another 3 minutes and 27 seconds. After there's no pulse, the knee remains on the neck for another 2 minutes and 44 seconds.
Dr. Tobin's testimony appears to contradict the findings of the medical examiner, Dr. Andrew Baker, who determined Floyd died because his heart and lungs stopped functioning while being restrained by police, with no mention of insufficient oxygen. That medical examiner is scheduled to testify tomorrow.
Okay.
Last night, the city...
Okay, pause right there. Thanks. All right. That is from the Readout with Joanne Reed, April 8th, 2021, MSNBC. Lastly here, let's go back quickly here to Washington Post, and they get into talk more about Excited Delirium in the next portion here, dealing with the live update. Chauvin's legal team argues Excited Delirium contributed to his death, but it has no definition. So they talk about that. Then they get into George Floyd should have gotten CPR, quote, way before it was given, expert says. Dr. Bill Smock, an emergency medicine physician and police surgeon, testified today that George Floyd should have received CPR far sooner than he did. Asked when CPR should have started, he responded, way before it was. As soon as Mr. Floyd is unconscious, he should have been rolled over. Analyzing video of George Floyd pinned to the ground, Dr. Bill Smock also pointed out signs that the man was struggling to get oxygen. Okay. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a few more minutes. Those watching on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right, stand by. Let me clear this line. Okay. All right, we're going to keep going for a couple more minutes, and I want to get into this information dealing with the history of segregation and a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. Okay, this deals with a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways. Okay. Also, if you'd like to stop your information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Okay. And then also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So we're here 6 nights a week, 6 days a week to help us keep broadcasting, keep doing the research, stay on the air, finance the show, pay some of the bills, etc. Okay. So thanks for your support. Also, all of my DVD lectures are at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, DVD lectures and digital downloads at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That helps support us also.
We all know the cannabis industry is headed toward an uprise in the past decade. What happens when there is a brand that brings this uprise in a blow? The cannabis industry welcomes her uprise. Hustle her hemp. Delivering excellence with pride is her watchword, and how you choose to embrace it makes it a priority. From cultivating rich cannabis into exquisite and tastefully finished CBD products to delivery, Hustle Her Hemp leaves no stone unturned. Hustle Her Hemp's mission is to empower women of color by building business and creating legacies, uniting beauty, health, and business. We are a pure definition of how we want the CBD industry to become in the future. While we are redefining innovation, we bring the same energy to improving the quality of life. Hustle Her Hemp is the new uprise.
Black Bees products are a collection of natural, organic, personal care products with an appreciation of nature and bees. Our philosophy is without bees, we have nothing. We are honoring our Nile Valley ancestors who understood the importance of bees. Black Bees created a high-quality, natural, organic personal care line that would be affordable to everyone. We hope you try and enjoy our Black Bees products line and come back and visit us at blackbeesproducts.com.
With blackbusinesstee.com, the messages are clear and meaningful. Keep your business in the black and out of the red. Mind your black business, know your numbers, and plan strategically. Black Business Boss, lead your industry. Support black business, encourage, patronize, and uplift one another. blackbusinesstee.com currently has products sold in Detroit, Atlanta, Chicago, and Los Angeles, with proceeds returned to the black community. They have a wide selection of hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, hats, sweatshirts that support black-owned businesses. Visit the website blackbusinesstee.com. That's blackbusinesstee.com.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
For 25 years, the Black History 101 Mobile Museum has carried on the rich legacy of the Black Museum movement in America by showcasing original artifacts of the Black experience at colleges, universities, K-12 schools, corporations, libraries, conferences, and cultural events, making it the most traversed Black History mobile exhibit in American history. Dr. Khalid El Hakim is the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and he is a highly sought-after public speaker on topics of Black history, social studies, education, museum studies, hip-hop, and race relations. Dr. Khalid was named among the change makers for NBC Universal's Erase the Hate campaign and listed as one of the 100 men of distinction for Black enterprise. He recently founded the Michigan Hip Hop Archive on the campus of Western Michigan University. The Black History 101 Mobile Museum is currently scheduling in-person and virtual exhibits nationwide. For more information, please contact Dr. Khalid El Hakim directly at 313-645-4197, 313-645-4197, or visit their website at blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. That's blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. You can also email him at bhistory101@yahoo.com, bhistory101@yahoo.com. All right. I want to go to this next clip quickly. Then we'll get into dealing with some of the history of how racism shaped interstate highways. This last clip, this is Police Surgeon Bill Smock, says George Floyd died because he had no oxygen left in his body. Okay, this is a short clip, but I want to go to this also because what the prosecution is doing. Now, see, it's important for people to understand. So some people say, oh, this is all we need to hear. They should stop the trial now. No mas, what have you. No. The defense has not presented their case yet. This is what I keep cautioning people. The defense has not presented their case yet. And all defense attorney Nelson needs to do is to plant the seeds of doubt in one juror to get them to not convict Derek Chauvin, and then you have a mistrial. You have a hung jury, okay? So you have a mistrial, and then it has to be the prosecution has to try the case again if they decide to try the case again. Which, if that's the case, they probably will try the case again. But I'm just saying. See, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, based upon the evidence, that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, and it doesn't have to be. Chauvin's knee on Floyd's neck does not have to be the only contributing factor or the only factor in George Floyd's death, just a major factor in his death. Okay, it doesn't have to be the only. It could be another contributing factor, but the knee on the neck is the major contributing factor. And you have to convince 12 jurors. It has to be unanimous to get a conviction. Okay, I want to go to this next clip here. This is from NBC News. Police surgeon says George Floyd died because he had no oxygen left in his body. This is Dr. Bill Smock once again.
About your opinions regarding the cause. Let's talk about your opinions regarding the cause of Mr. Floyd's death.
Yes, sir.
You formulated opinions.
Yes, sir, I did.
Would you tell us what your opinion or opinions are?
Mr. Floyd died from positional asphyxia, which is a fancy way of saying he died because he had no oxygen left in his body.
So what we've been referring to as low oxygen.
Low oxygen is one way, no oxygen. When the body is deprived of oxygen, in this case from his chest, pressure on his chest and back, he gradually succumbed to lower and lower levels of oxygen until it was gone and he died.
Did you consider other possibilities as causes that you evaluated and dismissed as unlikely?
Absolutely.
Was one of those excited delirium?
Yes, sir, it was.
Would you first tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what excited delirium is?
Excited delirium is a physical and psychiatric state where, because of an imbalance in the brain, a patient will exhibit multiple symptoms. Basically, they are hot, their body is revved up, heart rate is up, respiration is up, superhuman strength. They are out of control. Their speech is garbled. It doesn't make sense. They can't answer questions. That's what they call the delirium, someone who is delirious. So I'm very familiar with not only pre-hospital, but in the hospital, the symptoms of excited delirium.
Okay,
Paying attention.
so that is from that's from NBC News. That's Dr. Bill Smock. Okay, the police surgeon. All right, so we'll see what happens with the testimony from the medical examiner. It's quite possible that the testimony from the medical examiner will not contradict the testimony from Dr. Tobin, Dr. Martin Tobin, or Dr. Bill Smock. All right. Okay. I want to go to this next story here. This ties into the $2 trillion infrastructure bill and how a history of how racism shaped interstate highways. A history of how racism shaped interstate highways. Okay. So we're going to go to that here in just a minute. I want to give you some information here. There's a oratorical contest coming up from 100 Black Men of America, and it's taking place Saturday, April 10th. In the Metro Detroit area. Let's see. Let's pull up the information on this. Just a second here. Where is this? Okay. All right. So this is taking place Saturday, April 10th, 2021, 10 a.m., the 20th annual oratorical competition. This is 100 Black Men of Greater Detroit and Health Alliance Plan, HAP, the 20th Annual Oratorical Competition. Topic: Historical Disparities in American Healthcare and the impact of broken trust in Black communities. Historical disparities in American healthcare and the impact of broken trust in Black communities. This is taking place at D Loft Studio, the letter D, D Loft Studio, located at 138 Stratford Road in Ferndale, Michigan. 138 Stratford Road in Ferndale, Michigan. All right, and let's see here. Let's see if we can bring this up larger. Let's do this here. Let's click on it here and see if we can. Okay. Okay, yeah, 138 Stratford Road in Ferndale, Michigan. Now, they will also be streaming. So this is in person, but they will also be streaming online at facebook.com/100 Black Men of Greater Detroit, facebook.com/100 Black Men 100 Black Men of Greater Detroit. Guest judges include Kweku Osei Bonsu, Taylor Hill, and Christopher Purnell. The guest MC would be Andrew Humphrey from the weatherman from WDIV Channel 4 and reporter WDIV Channel 4 here in Detroit, Andrew Humphrey. You can view the event on Zoom. So they have, if you go to their website, 100blackmendetroit.org, 100blackmendetroit.org, they have more information, how to get involved, etc., and how to watch. Okay, 100 Black Men. Let's see here. 100blackmendetroit.org is the website. 100blackmendetroit.org is the website. My frat brother Dennis sent this to me. Also, that's how I found out about it. Okay, because he is the media contact for this, Dennis Williams. But visit their website. You can find out more information about this. Okay. All right. Let's look at. I want to go to this other story here. And you've heard me talk about the U.S. Interstate Highways and the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts 1952 and 1957. 1952, 1956, I should say. I saw this story yesterday. This is from NPR.org. Let's pull this up here. This is a brief history of how racism shaped interstate highways, okay, by Noel King. And they talk about the $2 trillion plan to improve America's infrastructure. And President Joe Biden is promising to address the racism ingrained in historical transportation and urban planning. Okay. Now, during the 2020 presidential election, and you had all these idiots on social media saying don't vote or just vote down ballot and things like this. They didn't talk about infrastructure. They didn't talk about interstate highways. They didn't talk about an infrastructure bill. Okay. And all this ties into politics. Okay. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of law, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And I want to pull up some information here. deals with the infrastructure plan. Okay. Let's pull this up also. All right. So Biden's plan includes $20 billion for a program that would, quote, reconnect neighborhoods cut off by historic investments. Reconnect neighborhoods cut off by historic investments, according to the White House. It also looks to target 40% of the benefits of climate and clean infrastructure investments to disadvantaged communities. It also looks to target 40% of the benefits of climate and clean infrastructure investments to disadvantaged communities. Now, planners of the interstate highway system, which began to take shape after the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, routed some highways directly and sometimes purposefully through Black and brown African American and Hispanic communities. In some instances, the government took homes by eminent domain. Okay, some of our homes were taken by eminent domain, and then some of our homes and the expressways are going to run through about 41,000 miles of interstate highway. They're going to run through about 1,600 African American communities all across the country. All right, and this disrupts our communities. They ran through Black Bottom here, the Black Bottom Paradise Valley area. That's I-375 that ran through there. We're going to see this take place all throughout the country, wiping out African American businesses, wiping out many of our homes that we owned, displacing us into other neighborhoods. All right, there is a article. There's another article I want to pull up just a second here. There's another article I'm going to go to in just a second here. Now, it left a deep psychological scar on neighborhoods that lost homes, churches, and schools, said Deborah Archer, a professor at the New York University School of Law and national board president of the American Civil Liberties Union. Professor Deborah Archer recently wrote for the Iowa Law Review about how transportation policy affected the development of Black communities. Okay, so most people don't understand how all of this is interconnected. Okay, whether you talk about infrastructure, climate change, criminal justice reform, whether you talk about the American Rescue Plan, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, a lot of people don't understand how all these policies and laws are interconnected and impact African Americans. Professor Deborah Archer says President Joe Biden will face major challenges in trying to rectify historical inequities. Okay, you ain't lying about that. She said, what is not clear is whether and how that money will be distributed in a way that will address the racial inequalities that are built into our transportation system. Racial inequalities that are built into our transportation system and our infrastructure. Okay. She said, I think it is also important for us to think about how we will shift culture within the relevant agencies so that white middle class and affluent neighborhoods will not continue to be favored at the expense of communities of color. Okay. How I think it's also important for us to think about how we will shift culture within the relevant agencies so that white middle class and affluent neighborhoods will not continue to be favored at the expense of communities of color, producing lopsided and skewed patterns of infrastructure development. So they go through some highlights of the interview that National Public Radio did with Professor Deborah Archer. Okay, we're going to continue with that here. And then recently I talked about this other article from NPR, and this deals with a history of segregation. And let me see if we can pull this up. It dealt with housing segregation, okay? It's from NPR, and it dealt with housing segregation, I think it was. I'm going to try to pull this up because I don't have it printed somewhere, but where is that? Let me see some. Yeah, this article right here. We just talked about this a few days ago. I'm going to go to this one next. I'm going to show you this here because all this is connected, okay? Let's see here. All right, hold on. Flip over. Okay, this other article here, it connects to the one that just came out from NPR. A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. A forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America. This is from May 3rd, 2017, National Public Radio, NPR.org. All of this history is connected. Federal housing policies created after the Depression ensured that African Americans and other people of color were left out of the new suburban communities and pushed instead into urban housing projects such as Detroit's Brewster Douglass Towers, the Brewster Douglass projects in Detroit. And one of the things they talk about in this article is redlining, a policy of redlining. But they also talk about the interstate highways as well. Okay. And if we, Federal Housing Administration, all this is dealing with the government. The underwriting manual of the federal administration recommended that highways be a good way to separate African Americans from white neighborhoods. So this was not a matter of law, it was a matter of government regulation, but it also was not hidden. So it can't be claimed that this was some kind of de facto situation. Regulations that are written in law and published in the underwriting manual are as much a de jure unconstitutional expression of government policy as something written in law. On the okay, then they talk about the long-term effects of African Americans being prohibited from buying homes in suburbs and building equity. All this ties into the racial wealth gap. Redlining, U.S. Interstate Highway Act, housing segregation, disrupting the expressways, disrupting African American neighborhoods. All of this is connected, okay? And this all ties into infrastructure. And politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, the adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. All this is connected. If we look at this article here from thinkprogress.org, these are all articles in my archives. I have thousands and thousands of articles in my archives. March 31st, 2016. Top infrastructure official explains how America used highways to destroy black neighborhoods. This is from thinkprogress.org. Okay. Top infrastructure official explains how America used highways to destroy black neighborhoods. So remember when the piece from news Newsweek.com that came out April 4th, 2018, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And it was a study by YouGov. It was a survey. It was a poll by YouGov. And this poll said that 40%, the finding was 40% of white people said that African Americans could be equally as successful as white people if they just tried harder. This was on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. Okay, that this survey came out. This poll. This is from this article here from Newsweek.com. Is from April 4th, 2018. That's the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. 40% of whites think black people just need to try harder. Okay, and go through and read the full article. But it says YouGov asked a number of questions of what it called racial resentment. Racial resentment. One of which centered on whether the respondent agreed with the statement. It's really a matter of some people not trying hard enough. If blacks would only try harder, they could be just as well off as whites. If blacks could just try harder, they could be just as well off as whites. So basically 40% of white people surveyed agree with this. Overall, 35% of respondents agreed, 16% strongly agreed, 19% somewhat with that statement, 28% neither agreed or disagreed. Okay. This is what happens when you're ignorant of history. This doesn't have anything to do with trying harder. This is what happens when you're ignorant of history and you don't understand the history of what the federal government has done in U.S. Interstate Highway Acts, redlining, the GI Bill, all different types of things like this. This is after slavery. We ain't talking about 246 years of slavery. We're talking about after that. Okay? This is what happens when you don't understand history like this. How the federal government used interstate highways to destroy African American neighborhoods, or how segregation in housing is something that was created by the federal government. Okay, and this ties back to the New Deal and President Franklin Roosevelt. And even though some policies, it is true, some policies in the New Deal were beneficial to some African Americans, but because a lot of the resources were distributed at the state level, it allowed those southern states, that allow those former Confederate states, it allowed them to discriminate against African Americans. Okay, this is what happens when you don't understand a forgotten history of how the U.S. government segregated America, right? And things like they break it down here, the Federal Housing Administration, which was established in 1934, and the Homeowners Loan Corporation, established in 1933, all government entities. Redlining was created by the federal government. So when you don't understand history, and this is why I have said numerous times, America needs a massive history lesson. And that's why this study from the Southern Poverty Law Center is so important. Teaching Hard History American Slavery, Teaching Hard History American Slavery from the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's about a 52-page study. You can download this from splcenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center. And it breaks down how the history of slavery is largely being mistaught in schools all across the country. Okay. And how it's being largely mistaught in schools all across the country. And also it is it lays out recommendations on how to more correctly teach the history of slavery as well. Okay. It lays out recommendations on how to more correctly teach the history of slavery also. All right. So all right. So that's why that study is so important. Okay, let's continue. Let's wrap this up here. Okay, so I want to go back to this one here. I'm going to give you this link here to the study from YouGov. And I want to go back to the main article here from Think Progress. Let's see here. Let's close that out. Okay, just a second here. All right, here we go. We're going to go back to the main article, A Brief History of How Racism Shaped Interstate Highways. Okay, so I think it's also important for us to think about how we will shift culture within the relevant agencies so that white middle class and affluent neighborhoods will not continue to be favored at the expense of communities of color, producing lopsided and skewed patterns of infrastructure development. Okay, so then it goes through and breaks down highlights of the interview with Professor Deborah Archer. Why would officials have targeted thriving, vibrant communities? Was it just because the people who lived there were African American and Hispanic? This is the interviewer for National Public Radio. They're asking her these questions. So she said, some of the time, yes, that was actually the case. The highways were being built just as courts around the country were striking down traditional tools of racial segregation. A lot of this ties into also Brown versus Board of Education, U.S. Supreme Court case of 1954, desegregation case. Okay. She says, so for example, courts were striking down the use of racial zoning to keep African Americans in certain communities and white people in other communities, racial zoning. And so the highway development popped up at a time when the idea, the possibility of integration in housing was on the horizon. And so very intentionally, highways were sometimes built right on the formal boundary lines that we saw used during racial zoning. Sometimes community members asked the highway builders to create a barrier between their community and encroaching Black communities. Okay, so this becomes a tool of segregation to enforce racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So the interviewer goes on to say, I think it was Noel King who did this interview. As I read your paper, I was astonished to realize how many places this happened. Was there any successful resistance? So Professor Deborah Archer says there was certainly successful resistance. We can see good examples in Greenwich Village in New York. There were examples from Washington, D.C., which is where the phrase no white men's roads through Black men's homes. No white men's roads through Black men's homes. This is where this phrase comes from in Washington, D.C. That was the rallying cry for folks in Washington, D.C. who resisted it. And there was also a successful effort in New Orleans. But I think it is important to note, I think it's important to point out the most successful efforts to stop highways were not those that focused on racial justice or those that were put in place to protect Black communities. The people who were most successful were the ones that focused on environmental justice and protecting parks in their communities in that way. The people who were most successful were the ones that focused on environmental justice and protecting parks and their communities in that way. So she was asked, if this initiative works, in what ways do you see the country being different in 5 or 10 years? Professor Deborah Archer said, I think that right now we can see that race frequently explains which communities receive the benefits of our transportation system and infrastructure, and which communities were forced to host the burdens, which communities will receive the benefits of transportation, of our transportation system and infrastructure, and then which communities were forced to host the burdens. Our transportation systems have really led to racial disparities and discrimination, which are reinforced daily from highways, roads, bridges, to sidewalks and public transit. We make it harder for African Americans and people of color to access and take advantage of opportunities. We make it harder for African Americans and people of color and other people of color to access and take advantage of opportunities. Once again, this is dealing with racism, but understanding how this plays a role in infrastructure. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. So I would hope that at the end of this project, at the end of this plan, as you see in 5 years, that race would not be a way to explain who gets the benefits and who gets the burdens. It would not be a way to explain who has access and who does not. Okay. All right. So check out this article here from National Public Radio, A Brief History of How Racism Shaped Interstate Highways. And then this ties into the 2 point is about 2.7, about a $2.7 trillion infrastructure bill that President Joe Biden has unveiled. If we look here very quickly, and you can read this yourself, this is from the Washington Post, or just Google Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure bill. They have a fact sheet on it at whitehouse.gov as well. I think I'm going to pull that up also. Okay, let's see here. That one, it's one other article. There's something I was looking for and I just found it. And let's see, whitehouse.gov fact sheet. Where is this here? Yeah, right here. Okay, the American Jobs Plan. You can read, there's a ton of information at whitehouse.gov, official website of the White House. Ton of information there. Let's look at this here. What's in Biden's $2 trillion jobs and infrastructure bill? What's in Biden's $2 trillion jobs and infrastructure bill? The proposal, which includes a major focus on climate change, could lay the groundwork for the president's economic agenda. So this is from March 31st, 2021. Okay, President Biden unveiled a $2 trillion jobs and infrastructure bill Wednesday to address some of the country's most pressing problems, including damaged bridges, unequal broadband access, which is huge, the digital divide. There's so many communities, rural communities, 25% of African Americans live in rural America. So many communities don't have high-speed broadband internet access. Climate change and care for people with disabilities and the elderly. Biden's proposal, the American Jobs Plan, would be paid for in part by raising the corporate tax and global minimum tax. Many of these measures would reverse the Trump administration's 2017 tax cut, which billionaires and millionaires did not need. Okay, so infrastructure bill plan covers manufacturing, caretaking, estimated spending. Okay, so they break this down. They have this chart. Okay, infrastructure at home. Okay, they deal with $111 billion for clean drinking water and that infrastructure, pipes and things like this. $100 billion for high-speed broadband internet. $100 billion for electrical infrastructure. I'm sure they'll love that down in Texas. Affordable and sustainable housing, $213 billion. Public schools, early learning centers, and community colleges, $137 billion. Then you have transportation infrastructure, $621 billion. That's broken down. Highways and bridges and roads, $115 billion. Public transit, $85 billion. Passenger and freight rail, $80 billion. Electric vehicles, $174 billion. Airports, water transit, and ports, $42 billion. Transportation inequities, $45 billion. Infrastructure resilience, $50 billion. Research and development, $180 billion. Manufacturing and small business, $300 billion. Workforce development, $100 billion. So there's a ton of opportunity in this bill. Okay. Let's see here. The American Jobs Plan is expected to be followed by a second economic package in April that includes a major expansion in health insurance, child care subsidies, free access to community colleges, and other proposals. Let's see. Okay, so they break it down here. Infrastructure, $621 billion. That's broken down. And a lot of that is in the chart that I just showed you. Infrastructure at home, $650 billion. Okay. Care economy, $400 billion. The plan expands access to home or community-based care for seniors and people with disabilities. It would extend a Medicaid program. Now, there are going to be a lot of contracts given out. There are going to be a lot of government contracts given out to businesses to provide to provide various services also, like in the care economy and home health care and caretakers, all different types of things like this. There's a huge amount of opportunity here for businesses to provide services. Research and development, manufacturing and training, $580 billion. Tax overhaul. The White House plan calls for about $2 trillion in new spending over 8 years. The proposed tax increases would cover that cost over 15 years and become permanent. The plan raises the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Let's see here. Okay, climate change. The White House says 40% of the benefits of its climate and clean infrastructure investments will go to disadvantaged communities. 40% of the benefits of its climate and clean infrastructure investments will go to disadvantaged communities. Let's see here. The plan was okay. Workers' rights. Biden calls for passage of the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, or PRO Act, which is aimed at significantly strengthening workers' rights to organize. Okay, and that deals with unions, which is extremely beneficial because unions have taken a beating because of right to work laws in about 27 states now. That's been heavily funded by the Koch brothers and like Americans for Prosperity, one of the Koch brothers nonprofit organizations. Okay, so read this. What's in Biden's $2 trillion jobs and infrastructure plan? All right, and then now this is the other article I was looking for here. Okay, now that's from the Washington Post. Here's the one I was looking for, and I just found it again here. This is from the Washington Post as well. A woman called for a highways removal in a black neighborhood. The White House singled it out in its infrastructure plan. A woman called for a highways removal in a black neighborhood. The White House singled it out in its infrastructure plan. This is from April 1st, 2021. Talks about in New Orleans and a woman named Amy Stelly. Since she moved back home to Treme, almost a decade ago, Amy Stelly has waged a campaign for the removal of a highway that cuts through her New Orleans neighborhood. She struggled to get support from local leaders. Neighbors considered the quest to be wishful thinking. She said, nobody thinks you can get rid of a highway. Nobody thinks you can get rid of a highway. On Wednesday, Amy Stelly's effort gained a considerable boost when the White House named the highway the Claiborne Expressway, an example of a historic inequity, that President Joe Biden's new infrastructure plan would seek to address through billions in new spending. Amy Stelly did not know the road had been singled out until a reporter called. She said, I'm floored. I'm thrilled to hear President Biden would call out the Claiborne Expressway as a racist highway. Now, Amy Stelly is an architectural designer, and she is part of a growing movement across the country to take down highways bored through or that were driven through neighborhoods predominantly home to people of color, especially African Americans. Most were created as the federal government worked to connect the nation after the birth of the interstate highway system. Many such highways are reaching the end of their 50-year lifespans, raising the question of whether they should be rebuilt or reimagined. Rebuilt or reimagined. It's the same in many Black communities, not only in Louisiana, Amy Stelly said. It's great the federal government and the administration is recognizing that this is something that must be corrected if we are to be fair and just in America. Now, the elevated Claiborne Expressway was built atop Claiborne Avenue and completed in 1968. That's the same year Dr. King was assassinated. From her second floor porch, Amy Stelly can see a ramp to the highway rising up from the street. She said air pollutants stick to her home. Air pollutants stick to her home. So there's also a correlation between highways coming through your community and increased levels of air pollution, which comes from the cars that are coming through in mass through these communities back and forth on the highways. Quote, I live with the ills of the highway every day. Beneath the highway, the wide median of the Claiborne Avenue, of the old Claiborne Avenue, beneath the highway, the wide median of the old Claiborne Avenue is still largely intact. It used to be a busy thoroughfare. Amy Stelly wants it restored to something like its former condition. Okay, and they show a picture here from 1947, North Claiborne at Ursuline Street in New Orleans in 1947, before the construction of the interstate disrupted the community. Okay, and then, okay. Now, a spokesperson for New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell says she appreciated the Biden administration's acknowledgement of the devastation to surrounding African-American businesses the highway construction has caused. The devastation, quote, the devastation to surrounding African-American businesses, end quote, the highway construction has caused. Quote, since taking office, our administration has focused on improving the city's aging infrastructure and doing so in a manner responsive to the needs of all of our residents, the spokesman said. Let's see. Okay. So Biden's $2 trillion plus American Jobs Plan infrastructure bill calls for a $20 billion fund to quote unquote reconnect neighborhoods cut off by old transportation projects. Documents released Wednesday, the week of April 1st, 2021, by the White House provided little detail about how the money could be used, but the projected cost of taking down highways varies from a few $100 million to billions of dollars. Okay, to read the rest of this article here. I saw this back April 1st when it came out, and I bookmarked it, but I didn't have a chance to talk about this on the show. This is huge, and this all ties in to history. This ties into politics, racism, etc. Okay, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of law, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This deals with Interstate Highway, which then ties into the infrastructure bill. You have to have enough people in the House of Representatives to pass the infrastructure bill, 218 votes. Now, because in the Senate, because of the budget reconciliation process, they can actually, Democrats will just need 51 votes, 50 plus one tiebreaker, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, to push this through. Now, you're going to need Joe Manchin to vote for it. I think Joe Manchin will vote for this. He's not going to vote to get rid of or change the filibuster, which is why in the 2022 midterm elections, more Democrats have to be voted into the Senate and vote out Republicans, so you can get to like 60 plus 1 or 60 plus 2 and nullify Joe Manchin's vote. So even if Joe Manchin votes against certain bills, certain Democratic bills, you'll still have 60 votes to get it passed. Because you need, outside of judges, most things dealing with finances and things like this, you need 60 votes in the Senate. Like reparations, you don't even have 40 votes in the Senate to support reparations. This is why when people say reparations now, my response is reparations how? Explain to me where the vote's going to come from. Because as it stands now, you only have 50 Democrats in the Senate, and all of them don't even support reparations. And which Republicans you think gonna vote for a reparations bill in the Senate? You couldn't get a single Republican in the Senate to vote for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, and most of that is going to benefit. And that $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan would be very beneficial for a lot of white people that voted the Republicans in office in the first place, especially a lot of poor white Republicans. You couldn't get a single Republican, and not just the House, but the Senate to vote for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. So which Republicans you think gonna vote for reparations in the Senate? And Senator Tim Scott, the only black Republican in the Senate, he's already said he's not voting for reparations. So if the black Republican is not going to vote for reparations in the Senate, how many white Republicans you think going to vote for reparations? This is why when people say reparations now, my response to them is reparations how? Explain to me how you get this bill passed. I want to hear this. Okay, so read this article also from Washington Post. A woman called for a highway's removal in a black neighborhood. The White House singled it out in its infrastructure plan. This is an example of how elections have consequences. This is why we broke down Joe Biden's plan numerous times, especially his 22-page agenda to empower Black America. We broke this down numerous times here on this show to show you the difference between policies from a Biden administration and a Trump administration. This is why we went through step by step and broke this down. All right. Okay, hey, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. And then at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. So this helps us to keep doing the research there on the air, keep broadcasting. I should be on Roller Martin Unfiltered on Friday, and we'll discuss some excerpts of that on our Friday show. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering. Oh, be sure to follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. A lot of people are not being notified when we go live. If you got a notification when we went live today for this show, just post here. Let me know yes or no whether you got a notification that we went live. If you subscribe to our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, if you subscribe, let me know if you got a notification. I'm trying to figure this out. Today when Roland broadcasted his show, no notification came through, and there's a number of people that were posting on the live stream that they did not get a notification that he was on the air. Okay, normally we get a notification, but I didn't get one today. A lot of people said they didn't get one, but when I broadcast, there's a number of people who are not getting the live notifications, and then also I'm running into the same problem on YouTube as well. So I'm trying to figure this out. So if you're watching on Facebook, on the African History Network Facebook fan page, as well as on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, let me know, did you get a notification when we went live? Be sure to subscribe to our channels and then turn on live notifications. So hopefully you'll be notified when we go live also. All right. Okay. All right. How you doing, Eric and Robin? All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Digital Dandelion's Technical Solutions works with businesses like yours to create an operations manual for your business, which is something many businesses don't have. According to AARP, more than 30% of small business owners are over 50 years old. Many business owners want to retire by selling their businesses or by passing their businesses on to their children. However, according to Forbes Investment Advisors, many retiring owners' attempts to sell their businesses for retirement fail. You cannot sell your business without a business manual. Your children also cannot inherit your business because there is no way to run it. Your business does not have to die when you leave. Their business Bible products will give you the tools you need for a thriving business that can make you money even after you retire. Are you looking at increasing your business's annual revenue? Digital Dandelions can help you make at least $100,000 in annual revenue and expand your business. Speak with them today about solidifying your business. Visit digitaldandelions.com today and get a free 30-minute consultation. For 25 years, the Black History 101 Mobile Museum has carried on the rich legacy of the Black Museum movement in America by showcasing original artifacts of the Black experience at colleges, universities, K-12 schools, corporations, libraries, conferences, and cultural events, making it the most traversed Black History mobile exhibit in American history. Dr. Khalid El Hakim is the founder of the Black History 101 Mobile Museum, and he is a highly sought-after public speaker on topics of Black history, social studies, education, museum studies, hip-hop, and race relations. Dr. Khalid was named among the change makers for NBC Universal's Erase the Hate campaign and listed as one of the 100 men of distinction for Black enterprise. He recently founded the Michigan Hip Hop Archive on the campus of Western Michigan University. The Black History 101 Mobile Museum is currently scheduling in-person and virtual exhibits nationwide. For more information, please contact Dr. Khalid Al Hakim directly at 313-645-4197, 313-645-4197, or visit their website at blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. That's blackhistorymobilemuseum.com. You can also email him at bhistory101@yahoo.com, bhistory101@yahoo.com.
Gain knowledge in minutes from insightful summaries of progressive and socially conscious books. Blacklisted gives you access to curated content that'll satisfy your curiosity to learn and understand different perspectives. Empower yourself through inspirational and actionable ideas. It's easy to read or listen to on the go. Blacklisted. Empower yourself. Start your free trial today.
Hi, I'm Joel Wilson, President and CEO of Jcw Computer Consulting Llc, a technology implementation firm with over 20 years of satisfying customers. We offer a full spectrum of industry top-tier branded services. We are an authorized partner or reseller for Lenovo, Zoom, T-Mobile, Microsoft 365 and Surface tablets, Google Workspace, Acer, Asus, Samsung, PCmatic security software, and many more. Our online store features laptops, Chromebooks, computers, printers, accessories, and software. Businesses, take advantage of our free 1-hour Zoom tech consultation and know we offer top